This is where I do my balloon animals. Tap dancing. All right, do we want to get a thumbs up? Are the sheriffs getting close? There's one. There, hi. Oh, see, they're on the news. How about that? Well, let's start. We can bring up Sheriff Shannon Dicus.
San Bernardino County evolved from quiet but many times lawless beginnings in the mountains, deserts, and ranches of Southern California. The economies of the era were based on mining, agriculture, ranching, and railroad, which supported many communities throughout Southern California. Historical documents report that life in San Bernardino County during the mid to late 1800s was often disrupted by criminal elements, including murder, forced labor, money jumpers, and bank robbers of the most notorious. More than 150 years have passed since people like Wyatt Earp, Willie Roy, and other Western characters walked the dirt streets and rode horseback across desert trails. What was once known as the Old West now stands as a colorful part of our history. Fast-growing San Bernardino County is a residential transportation commercial center with a diverse industrial base. The men and women of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department are highly trained and ready to make crucial day-to-day life-saving decisions with a high standard of personal integrity, continuing our legacy of progress and innovation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you now to Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. Villanueva, there you are. Have a seat. Welcome. County of Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. our first ever Tri-County Sheriff's Forum. Sheriff Alex Villanueva is here, Sheriff Chad Bianco, and Sheriff Shannon Dicus. I'm your host today, Jennifer Horn. I host the Morning Answer on AM 870 and AM 590, The Answer, and really appreciate all of you turning out for our first annual event. And if you will, please rise for the presentation of the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now Gabe, is it Gabe or Gabby Reyes will be joining us to sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? God bless you and God bless America.
A big round of applause for Gabby Reyes. That was beautiful.
Right shoulder up. Right. Up.
Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Chaplain Dennis Morales, who will deliver the invocation.
Good afternoon. Let's all bow our heads in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for our sheriffs here this afternoon. Sheriff Dicus, Bianco, and Villanueva for their determination, versatility, and fortitude in the face of this unprecedented time. We thank you, Lord, for bringing these three counties together. Our sheriffs, our businesses, churches, communities, our families, who have committed their very fiber to the betterment and safety of our communities. Lord, you are not ignorant to the evil agenda being pushed today, as there is nothing hidden from you, your word says. Your word says your eyes are on both the good and the evil. And we thank you for our sheriffs, for our business leaders and community who are standing in the gap for peace and unity. In these unprecedented times, there may be discord, but we call for your peace. There will be evil, but we stand for your good. There would be hatred, but we pray for forgiveness. Thank you for such a time as this. This is the time that you have established our existence on earth, and the time that you have called us to see your wondrous works. Even in the midst of unrest, you're still God and still on the throne. And we thank you for bringing us together. We know that your word says, strive for full restoration, encourage one another, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. We ask that you would continue to use our sheriffs, Dicus, Bianco, and Villanueva, as they lead the respective departments to break down walls and to build bridges. We thank you for all our businesses again here, members here today, seeking to be catalysts for prosperity in our community. We thank you, Lord, for all the men and women of every department, that you would have your hand upon them, that you would keep them and their families safe. We thank you, Lord, for their courage every day, going out into the evening, into the day, giving their lives for families, for people that they do not know. Lord, your word says, greater love hath no man than this, than for one to lay down his life for his friends. We thank you for these and protect them, protect our sheriffs and their families, their wives. And we thank you, Lord, so much for this day, that bringing us together in unity and faith, hope, and love as we come together. Have your hand upon our meeting, and we pray that your presence would be known. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you.
All right, special thank you to Dennis Morales for that beautiful prayer. And a special thank you to Norma Murakami and Mike Cargile, you know him, Smile with Cargile, for helping to facilitate today's event. Now I will introduce you to these fabulous men up here. Start with Sheriff Chad Bianco. Chad Bianco was elected sheriff, coroner, and public administrator of Riverside County in the November 6, 2018 general election. He is a 28-year veteran of the department. As sheriff, he serves as the chief law enforcement officer of Riverside County. Sheriff Bianco entered the Riverside County Sheriff's Department on December 31st, 1993. He began his career in corrections at the Robert Presley Detention Center, and he spent time working patrol and narcotics in the city of Lake Elsinore. Sheriff Bianco held supervisory and management positions at the Hoopa Valley Station, Moreno Valley Police Department, the Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility, and the Hemet Station. Additionally, he served administrative assignments in internal affairs and corrections administration and planning. As the 14th sheriff of Riverside County, Sheriff Bianco also serves as sheriff coroner and public administrator. Sheriff Bianco oversees the county's 5 jail facilities, 6 court buildings, a civil bureau, the coroner's bureau, and public administrator's office, 17 contract cities, 4,000 dedicated employees, and an operating budget of nearly $900 million. Sheriff Bianco is married with 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren. He and his wife Denise live in the Woodcrest area of Riverside. Sheriff Bianco believes in service above self and hopes that his priorities of God, family, and service will provide meaningful guidance and direction as the Sheriff's Office engages in unprecedented change of culture to positively influence and engage our community. Sheriff Chad Bianco. Shannon Dicus was appointed as the 36th Sheriff Coroner for San Bernardino County on July 14, 2021. San Bernardino County has over 2 million residents and is the nation's largest county, geographically spanning more than 20,056 miles. The department oversees the unincorporated county areas, operates the county jail systems, provides marshal services in the county courts, and contracts law enforcement services to 14 of the 24 incorporated cities within the county. The department consists of 2,007 sworn personnel, 2,073 professional employees, and 1,552 volunteers, with an annual budget of over $800 million. Shannon was raised in a law enforcement family and has lived in San Bernardino County for over 40 years. Shannon always knew he wanted to go into law enforcement and became a Sheriff's Explorer Scout while still in high school. After graduating, he enlisted in the United States Army and was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, where he served as military police officer at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and in Sinai, Egypt. After his military service, Shannon worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs Police Department in Loma Linda. He was hired by San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in 1991. Shannon graduated the 106th Basic Academy session and has since held positions at every rank within the department. His past assignments include corrections as well as patrol in Barstow, Apple Valley, Victorville City, and the Victor Valley Station. He has worked specialized details to include narcotics, SWAT, and criminal intelligence. More recently, Shannon served as the department's undersheriff, where he oversaw day-to-day operations, as well as internal affairs, civil liabilities, and the Bureau of Administration divisions. Shannon has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from California State University, San Bernardino, and a master's degree in communications from Cal Baptist University. As a longtime resident of San Bernardino County, Shannon is devoted to the citizens of the county and is always looking for new and innovative ways to better serve them. Shannon believes in developing progressive programs that not only assist the public, but also those re-entering society. Shannon has led the way in instituting programs focusing on inmate rehabilitation and re-entry, department crisis, mental health response, and county homelessness, to name a few. Shannon also takes great pride in being part of developing the department's next-gen info exchange. This program focuses on communicating with our younger community members ages 16 to 35, where they can voice concerns and ask questions about important issues that are vital to their generation. Through all of this, Shannon maintains his priorities of improving community relationships, public confidence, and effecting positive change from within the department. Sheriff Shannon Dicus. Sheriff Alex Villanueva is the 33rd Sheriff of Los Angeles County and a 34-year veteran of the department. Sheriff Villanueva commands the largest sheriff's department in the United States, consisting of nearly 18,000 budgeted, sworn, and professional staff. As sheriff, he has initiated reform efforts that are improving morale within the department, as well as rebuilding trust within the communities which the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department serves. Sheriff Villanueva was born in Chicago, Illinois, grew up in Rochester, New York, and Puerto Rico. He proudly served our country, enlisting in the United States Air Force in 1983. In 1984, he transferred to the California Air National Guard and achieved the rank of sergeant. In 1985, he then transferred to the California Army National Guard and completed Officer Candidate School in 1988, where he honorably served as lieutenant with the 40th Infantry Division for the next 7 years. Sheriff Villanueva began his law enforcement career in 1986, working within the Los Angeles County jails. For the next 30-plus years, he worked a variety of assignments at various ranks before retiring in early 2018. He was elected as sheriff in November of 2018. Sheriff Villanueva earned his bachelor in liberal studies from the University of the State of New York, his master's degree from California State University, Northridge, and ultimately his doctorate from the University of Laverne, both in public administration. Sheriff Villanueva has been married for 22 years to his wife Vivian and has an adult son, Jared, who is a veteran of the United States Army and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Sheriff Villanueva has 2 granddaughters, Chrissy and Sophia. Sheriff Alex Villanueva. So are you ready to hear from your sheriffs? Let's start first. Sheriff Dicus, would you like to begin? We'll give some opening remarks. We'll give about 5 minutes.
Well, first of all, it's great to be amongst friends, so thank you all for being here. I want to talk today strictly about capacity, and it's the capacity of the state of California. There are a number of things that have been happening, and we hear the word realignment going back to 1991. Really what that means is a number of responsibilities that the state has had have been pushed down to your local governments, specifically your sheriff's departments, and we continue to deal with this. You've all heard about police reform and a number of things that are going on, and we're dealing with a legislature that may be well-intentioned, but they certainly don't have any idea what they're talking about when it comes to the boots on the ground and what law enforcement does. I am very blessed to be in a county where my legislators and my board support me. They call before they vote. They ask how these things work. But unfortunately, that isn't what happens across the state. I've been recently testifying for a number of law enforcement bills that are straight up, strictly for protecting all of you. But these bills get knocked down in the Public Safety Committee before they're ever even sent back. Recently, we testified to Assembly Bill 1599. That was simply to repeal Prop 47, but more importantly, it was to send it back to all of you. And I want you to know the Public Safety Committee in this state stopped it from coming back to you. Folks, these things are happening across the board. The men and women that work in law enforcement are absolutely exceptional, and they will do everything they can possibly do to be there on your worst day. But a little bit about me, I want you to know that I'm a firm supporter of the CCW program. In San Bernardino County, we have 11,000 CCWs, and I'm going to make sure that continues to climb. But going back to the part I said about exceptional law enforcement officers in all of our counties, they will be there for you on your worst day. But it's critical to public safety that we have robust CCW programs, so in the event we just don't get there in time, you can protect yourself. Capacity. Capacity to be able to do some of the things we're talking about in the state. Why do we see homelessness? Why do we see mental health? Why do we see substance abuse completely skyrocketing? A number of these police reforms, we've done studies in our own county. These folks that we could probably affect their lives the best don't even spend 30 days in jail. They don't get GEDs, they don't get substance abuse treatment, and they don't get mental health treatment. We need capacity. They keep doing reforms for law enforcement without building capacity. Essentially, in this state, we're flying a plane with no place to land it. We need to build capacity for mental health and substance abuse in the form of conservatorships. If we're dealing with a majority that does not like folks going to jail, we can deal with that, but we've got to work on conservatorships to get these folks off the street and get them help. We're talking about the human condition. Right now, there's a lot of talk in law enforcement, and it usually ends up being red and blue or based on our color. We need to get back to we're human beings, and we need to take care of humanity. Folks, law enforcement isn't red or blue. We're about doing the right thing, and I couldn't be more proud than to be here with all of you today.
Thank you so much to Sheriff Shannon Dicus. Now we will hear an introduction from Sheriff Chad Bianco.
Thank you all, thank you. We drew straws in the back to see who was going to get to talk first, and Alex and I lost. So we're left to say ditto to everything that Shannon said. You know, what I hope that all of you get out of this is what we believe and what law enforcement feels is the relationships that we have and the battle that we have together to help you. We all are in the same boat together, working together with the ultimate goal of protecting you. This hasn't happened before, and without saying anything negative about law enforcement leaders in the past, we know that society evolves, culture evolves, and so does law enforcement. This is something new for Southern California. This is something new for California. And you have three, depending on the day, you certainly have, Alex is the biggest sheriff's department in the world, probably, in the country for sure. We are the second in California. Shannon is the third or fourth, depending on their hiring process for the week. And we're all in Southern California. If you take San Diego and Orange County, we represent 2/3 of the state. And I want to tell you that the relationships that we have built between us is that we are all on the same page to protect all of you, regardless of the county that you're in. Throughout our existence, criminals do not know or care about boundaries. They don't care what city they're in. They don't care what county they're in. Why would law enforcement? So what we have and what we're hopefully proving to you is that we all experience the same issues. We all have the same problems that we're dealing with, and we are united together to help all of you. I will piggyback on one thing that Sheriff Dicus said, in that we know very well how to fight crime. What is unique to where we are now is we are fighting state government in our ability to be able to protect you. Shannon and I are very lucky that we live in our two counties, that we do have a fantastic relationship with our board of supervisors, and for the most part, all of our city council members. I know you all know, Alex unfortunately doesn't have that. What I want to tell you, though, is the difference between us and those relationships. We would not have the same relationship if we had that same board. The difference is Alex's only goal is to protect you, to provide the best law enforcement that we have as a sheriff's department to keep you safe. And when you battle against policymakers and lawmakers that want to shrink our ability, whether it be in size, in budget, or even passing laws that make it to where we cannot protect you or difficult to protect you, that is what makes our lives difficult. I will say that you all know that we're in a rising crime. We do have rises in crime across the country. We are doing absolute best we can in Southern California to prevent those severe increases for all of you. What Shannon said about the CCW program is certainly true. We are a responder, as proactive as we want to be, and for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, that is our ultimate goal of service above self, providing a service, putting ourselves at risk and in danger, constantly and forcefully to protect you. And with that, sometimes we are, as proactive as we want to become, or as what we want to be, sometimes we are responding to the crimes that you are reporting to us. And like Shannon said, we can't be there right away. You have to be able to protect yourself, and I do believe in the ability of you should have the right to protect yourself. With the CCW process, there may be groups that will use this against me. I think it's a very, very positive. It's your Second Amendment right. We have increased our residents' ability in Riverside County. When I took over, we had roughly around 3,000 CCWs issued. We have now topped 18,000. And I will tell you, not one of those CCW holders has committed a crime, has hurt anyone else, and a person that comes and asks me for the right to carry one of our permits is not a criminal. The criminals don't do that. So to end, I want to thank all of you for coming out here today. I hope that this gets larger and larger, and as we continue, we may have the top 5 largest counties in this state on a forum just like this as we progress through the years. And I want all of you to know that we are nothing but on the same page to make Southern California the absolute best and safest place to live in the country.
Thank you, Sheriff Bianco. Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
I'm jealous. I just don't know what it's like to have a partner with the Board of Supervisors. My first month in office, they hired a law firm to sue me. That was my start. I think there's a little bit of echo in this one.
Yeah, we can change the mic.
Bad news, bad start, but that didn't mean that stopped us from doing the things that we wanted. I campaigned on reform, rebuild, and restore, and the political establishment lined up against me. 4 years later, I had the same political establishment still lined up against me, in spite of the fact that we reformed, rebuilt, and restored the Sheriff's Department. And I got to piggyback on both of my esteemed colleagues here about building capacity. The tragedy of Los Angeles, beside their suicide pact they have going on with the city and the county, is that they are not building capacity for mental health treatment, residential, and substance abuse treatment. We have 1/4 of the entire nation's homeless population is in my county. I call that a problem. I just can't convince the Board of Supervisors or City Council to understand it the same way. So let's keep our fingers crossed we get a good partner coming out of the mayor's race. There's some possibilities there. But along the way, it has been working with trying to resolve violent crime, the follow home robberies, the smash and grab robberies, all these different variations of crime that is just appalling. We thought we had figured it all out, and we've seen the worst of the worst until I learned just last weekend that a dead guy rode in our train for 6 hours. I didn't know how to explain that one. 6 hours on the MTA line. And then the MTA Board of Directors says, well, we don't want cops on the lines, but we want to increase the outreach to our homeless population. The result? 5,700 homeless who live on our trains in LA. Yes, you can't make that one up. It's just bizarre. But the good news is people are starting to figure it out. I'm hearing from liberal voices, conservative voices, everybody's coming together from Venice, from Topanga Canyon, Pomona, downtown LA, Placita Olvera, Brentwood, VA Center, all these places where we cleaned up homeless encampments, got people the help they needed. And in particular, our veterans who were literally living on the sidewalk in front of a huge VA facility. In all of these places now, we're starting to hear voices from liberals and conservatives realizing that it doesn't matter what party we belong to, it's what we hold near and dear, which is our community, the safety of our families, our loved ones, and how do we fight to get our community safe again, moving forward. So that is so important. I think actually having Republicans and Democrats and agree on something is unique. I know cats and dogs may rain out of the sky, but that's healthy. And the main tragedy of county and city government in LA is they only allow one ideology, only one point of view on every single thing they do. And I want to introduce other points of view. I want to introduce conservative voices, moderate voices on both sides of the aisle, and I'm going to protect and defend the woke crowd. As confused as they may be, I'm still going to defend their right to have that ideology, that opinion, and I want them to have a seat at the table. They just don't get to have every single seat. That's the key right there. So with that, I think we're in a good shape moving forward. So let's see that 2022 will be a referendum on what matters to our community, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be public safety, first, second, third, and always, and we're here to provide that. And I want to thank both of you because June 8th of last year, we invaded the high desert, and over 500 of us combined, and also Ventura, Kern County also, and we netted over $1 billion worth of weed, illegal, and it was a sight to see because we were starting to free up those communities in the high desert and return the property back to the rightful owners, free up the water supply so the farmers of our alfalfa, potato, and carrot crops could have water and not be stolen. Basic things in life. So I think we're on the right path moving forward, and I'm excited to continue working in this partnership, and I'm just going to ask everybody to do the same. Let's start working together to fix things instead of throwing rocks at each other. Thank you.
I'm going to take that memo to the Board of Supervisors for you, Sheriff Villanueva. All right, so the way that this is going to work today is that many of you have filled these cards out. San Bernardino County, Riverside County, Los Angeles County, all of these have questions on them. And we are going to ask the sheriffs questions for their individual counties, but also as a whole. The group can all respond. And we'll start with an all-answer question. And there are a lot of hot button issues in here. There are issues that are repeating themselves. So we received 2 questions. One was anonymous, one was from Tisha Rendon, and it's all about COVID. Now we all, I think, are feeling like we are over it. But the first question is, what is your position on the state's COVID response? And then more specifically, will you enforce unlawful mandates if we have another shutdown? And I think because you've had to deal with this so much, Sheriff Villanueva, let's start with you on both of these questions.
That's pretty easy, actually. I'm not going to enforce any unlawful mandate. In fact, at the very start of the pandemic in 2020, I was a director of emergency operations for the entire county. And within a week of the pandemic, they informed me they didn't need my services anymore. Then they proceeded to kill about 10,000 businesses in LA County when they decided the winners and the losers of the essential and non-essential contest. Every job that puts food on somebody's table is essential. When we're dealing with a new threat that we don't understand, it's okay to shut down briefly to figure it out and then go back to business once we've figured it out. Not to extend in perpetuity this nonsense has been going on. And on vaccine mandates for the Sheriff's Department, I stand to lose 4,000 employees that I'm not going to lose. The county's dead set on firing them. They're going to issue 45-day notices that their pay is going to be suspended. So we got a big battle coming ahead of us, and the pandemic's going to be over, and they're still going to be in court trying to get people fired.
Sheriff Bianco?
Well, just to piggyback, as you all know, I never did enforce any of those orders, and I certainly would not start. Making a criminal out of a 23-year-old single mother because she wants to go to work to put food on the table for her child is not my idea of law enforcement's responsibility, while at the same time the governor and his legislature and his departments were releasing thousands and thousands and thousands of criminals, convicted criminals, back into your neighborhoods. Part of the issue that we had with the pandemic starting, and it's a great example with them taking the responsibility away from Sheriff Villanueva with his emergency management. But in Riverside County, the fire chief and I had a discussion very early on that it was interesting that our entire careers, whether it's public safety, it's fire, and it's law enforcement, we deal with emergency day in and day out. Every time you call 911, that is an emergency that we are responding to with emotion, with violence, whatever the case may be, that every one of us learn how to function in an emergent exigency that requires ration, common sense, ability to reason, and then an immediate fix. The issue with what we experienced with the pandemic is that law enforcement and the fire department, who deal with emergency day in and day out, were pushed aside when all of those decisions were made. They never asked us what we thought would be the best response. They never asked fire what they thought would be the best response. They put it in the hands of people that had never experienced an emergency, had never had to deal with the public, and they made it up to them behind closed doors, people that you did not see, while they put us at the forefront, trying to blame us for either causing the pandemic because we wouldn't arrest you, or making it draw on and on and on because we wouldn't lock you into your houses and everything else to make it go away. So what we experienced over the last couple of years, we have certainly learned from. I think that for my personal opinion moving forward is as vocal as I was before. Should this happen again, I will be that much more vocal. And the important thing to that is this. Our legislators, not all of them, but the majority of them, didn't enjoy all of us and our input that we gave during that. And by us saying that we were not going to make criminals out of people, that we were not going to prioritize enforcing a mask mandate instead of a gang member mandate or a theft mandate or any of the other laws that we deal with on a daily basis, they are now trying to take that ability away from us. And they are trying to pass a law that makes it a crime for us to not enforce those mandates. We are and always have been a part of this state because of our Constitution. We are constitutional officers, and that we are here to protect you not only from criminals, but we are here to protect your civil rights. And I can tell you that we will continue doing that.
Thank you, Sheriff Dicus.
Jen, I'll make it quick. Welcome to the state of San Bernardino County. Folks, the chairman of our Board of Supervisors, Kurt Hagman's here. Kurt, if you could wave at everybody. But this is an example of a good partnership. In San Bernardino County, our board stood up and they decided that we were going to do education and compliance, that we were not going to outwardly enforce this. And to answer your question in the shortest terms I can, there is no mother and father that's wrestling their 2-year-old in the Costco parking lot that has to worry about a San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputy giving them a citation for a mask violation.
Thank you, Sheriff. This will be another question for all of you. It was an anonymous question, and I think it's an important one. Clearly, we do events like this for transparency and for community outreach. But the question for all of you, and Sheriff Bianco, let's start with you. What are you doing for community outreach in your department?
Thank you. I think community outreach is probably something that is in a law enforcement perspective, from a historical perspective, we have always felt that we're in our own little bubble, and we know how to do things best, and we know how to do things right. And the problem with doing that is, over the years, we alienated the public. We were there to protect you. We were doing everything that we could, but we didn't want your opinion. We wanted you to just believe what we were doing was right, and we were telling you that we were doing is right. What we have experienced, and I will tell you this, all of us, we're all the same age, and we all raised kids. And we raised a generation that, my generation, when my dad told me to do something, I did it. I did it just because he told me to do something and I knew the consequences of not. Raising my kids, this generation, I had to actually learn how to explain things. They would do it. They were going to do what I told them to do. They just wanted to know why. They wanted to know why I was doing it. They wanted to give me a different alternative that they thought was better. And then I had to convince them that I was right, and then they did it. And I raised 4 great kids. The only reason I am saying that is we have had to learn, and law enforcement has learned, that we may have been doing things wrong in the past, and society has evolved, and we have not. So community engagement and community involvement is paramount to our success. I can tell you by what we're doing right here, you have never seen this before. It has never happened before. This is something that we are doing above and beyond to engage the community. I encourage every single one of my deputies, of my employees, if you want to succeed, if you want to be successful in this career, you can't just be a cop. You have to learn how to be a member of the public also. I encourage them to be coaches. I encourage them to be volunteers in their community. Everything that can promote them as a law enforcement officer doing the regular things. We're just dads. We're dads, we're moms, we're neighbors, we're family. In the daytime, we put on a uniform and we go to work to protect you. But we're just a normal person engaged in the community. So that personal involvement between our department and our community is ultimately what we want. We want to build that relationship that holds both of us up.
Thank you, Sheriff Bianco. Sheriff Dicus, how are you doing community outreach in the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department?
So in our department, we pride ourselves in communicating with the public. We've had information exchange with our Public Affairs Division for years. And that is just like Alex described earlier, it's everyone has a seat at the table. It doesn't matter if you're an activist in our community, you will have access to not only me, but my entire executive staff. One of the things we realized during all the civil unrest that we all witnessed was there was an age group that we were missing, that 16 to 35-year-old group, because information exchange had kind of aged with us. So you heard about next-gen information exchange. That's where we have large groups. A deputy sits with each one of them. They introduce themselves. They start talking about what the community and young people think about law enforcement as a whole. But what's different about this is they build questions just like we're doing today. And instead of having a young person that may be afraid to stand up and ask that question, the deputy does it for them. So we make sure they get their question answered, whether it's a question asked from me or any of the rest of the executive staff. And then we have what I call the local level information exchange. Every single one of my commanders have the autonomy to speak my voice. And there is a different community in Victorville that is different from Apple Valley, is different from Rancho Cucamonga, is different from our county areas. We make sure that each individual command hears from their individual community members, and we make sure they're being policed to their expectations. And we've had great success with that. Also, the Sheriff's Rodeo and every one of our academy classes are our largest financial charitable events, and we donate over $100,000 to Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and a number of charities throughout the entire San Bernardino County.
Sheriff Villanueva.
Well, if I count today, this is my 95th town hall.
Wow.
So, can we count this one as a town? We'll count this one? All right. On Thursday night, I was in Santa Monica in the evening. Thursday morning, I was at Salazar Park in East LA, talking to senior citizens. One was in Spanish, one was in English. So that's 95 more town halls than the Board of Supervisors combined. Yet they'll tell me what the community wants. And I think I've heard directly from the community. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people, and I've crisscrossed. I've probably logged, I don't know how many thousands of miles going back and forth. And I can tell you that people want to be safe. They want to actually have their streets safe. You know, the simple things in life. They don't want to get run over when their kids are out playing. Basic things like that. They want to see their schools safe. They don't want to see bullies in the school. They want to see more cops, not less. Another memo that has never been read by the Board of Supervisors. But you only get that through outreach. We have a community advisory council now. We have over 500 volunteers. And we have them in so many different areas. We have them in culture. We have them based on the 24 patrol stations. If I'm counting Catalina. We always kind of forget Catalina. But they count too. That's a community there. So we're doing this massive outreach, and we're dealing at the street level, block level, house-to-house level, and our deputies are engaged with the community because they're moving away from, just like you were referencing, the old days was an enforcement model. We measured success by how many notches on the belt, how many bad guys. That was success. But no, not really. Yeah, bad guys need to go to jail, but it's how safe you're making your community and who doesn't go to jail. is a measure of success, because that means they avoided a life of crime. And that's what our focus is on. And we're doing that by engaging with the community in every language that's available, every culture that's present, and we have a representation on the advisory council, and it's working. Now, if we could just get the county of LA to emulate what we're doing, we'd be in really good shape.
Absolutely. So I think it'd be easier to find someone who didn't ask about concealed carry permits in this place than people who did. These are all the questions on CCWs. I'll read a few to you, and then we'll get your thoughts on this. This is from Jay Nelson. CCWs, are you issuing concealed weapons permits to ordinary civilians? If no, why not? If yes, congratulations. Larry says, are you planning on issuing more CCWs in Riverside County? That's to Sheriff Bianco. What are your positions on CCWs? From Lisa and another anonymous question. So let's start with you, Sheriff Dicus, about your philosophy when it comes to concealed carry permits.
So concealed carry permits are important. They're important not just because of the Second Amendment, but right now in the state of California, where we're all dealing with the revolving door of criminal justice, they're critically important to public safety. And there's a lot of people that think sheriffs issue these strictly as political favors. Folks, you heard the numbers up here. I don't think I have 11,000 political favors coming my way. I don't think Chad has 18,000 political favors he's come way, and correspondingly, Alex doesn't have that either. The reason we're doing it is because it is the right thing to do. It is your right to protect yourself, and we're going to ensure that that happens.
So I guess my philosophy, it's a huge philosophy, I guess, but it's multiple pronged. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a firm believer in everything about that. There probably is not anyone out there more supportive of the Second than I am. However, throughout our history, there has always been places or cities or towns or buildings that regulated where you could carry a handgun or where you could carry a firearm. It's no different than the CCW process that we have here. Contrary to it is not popular. Contrary to media belief, there is not one firearm that has ever jumped down off the table and ran out and hurt anyone. There is no such thing as gun violence. There are violent criminals that may use different tools to their end, but it has nothing to do with the gun. And a criminal will not come to me and ask permission to carry a gun. The purpose of a CCW permit is for law-abiding residents of our counties who wish to carry a firearm that are not prevented either criminally or mentally from doing so should be issued one of those permits from their local entity, which in Riverside County, it's the sheriff. And as long as I am here, I will continue to do that. We have just over 18,000 now. We have 2,500 still pending. And as the days go on, that number is hard to draw down, which tells us that there is a very large demand in our county. We have 2.5 million people. So when you say 18,000 out of 2.5 million, it isn't really that much. But I certainly am a 2A supporter and a supporter of CCW.
Sheriff Villanueva, things have changed in LA County. You're granting more of these permits now.
Yes, we've entered in a whole new era of CCWs in LA County. Right now, we've issued 2,670, and I have about another 350 that are working their way through the process, so we're just over 3,000. That's about 2,800 more than all of the previous sheriffs combined. So we've changed. And with a county of 10 million residents, and we're a short staff, there's only so many. It takes us about 6 to 8 months to get through the process, because every day we get a milk crate full of CCW applications like clockwork. And I have the same amount of staff. We added 2 more, and we literally had to rob Peter to pay Paul to keep that afloat and pick up the pace on it. But my standard for good cause that we're using is pretty straightforward. Assuming you're obviously of good moral character, you don't have any felony convictions, no restraining orders, all the legal stuff. I just need a reason why you individually need the CCW, a good cause. You could be who you are, where you're working, you were a victim of a crime, anything like that elevates it more than I live in LA, I'm scared. Because 10 million people say the exact same thing, and that would include thousands of gang members with no convictions. So I have to be able to separate the good guys from the bad guys. So our process works. I wish I could make it go faster, and hopefully I'll have the funding to make it, and we'll bump that number up, and we'll probably at some point we'll be able to catch up to them. But right now it's a logistical problem.
Thank you. All right, our next question is from Jose Casillas, and he says, how do we as a community help you be able to use the right resources for the current crimes rising, and how do we create a better relationship so that our interaction as a community is positive? And I would ask, just host prerogative here, just to give us a little snapshot of what you're really dealing with in terms of crime in each of your counties, and then answer Jose's question with how the average citizen can do the best they can in their interactions with you and to protect themselves and their families. Sheriff Villanueva, let's start with you.
Well, we finished 2021 with a 2-year increase of 94% in homicides, which is off the chart. So off the chart that my Board of Supervisors won't even mention that number. That's a scary one. 60% increase in grand theft auto. And what you see playing out on your images on TV every night on the evening news, all those smash and grabs, home invasion murders, like Jackie Avant, for example, Brianna Kupfer, the young lady in the furniture store, Tiona Theas, the little girl that was just tossed on the side of the freeway like garbage, Sandra Shells, the 70-year-old nurse who was assaulted by a transient at Union Station and killed. All of these senseless violence gives, and the numbers are starting to bear it out, that people are afraid. We go back to the late 80s, early 90s, when violent crime was pretty much concentrated in specific areas, and it was gang-on-gang violence, and rarely maybe it was an innocent bystander. Now that's becoming just more frequent all over the LA County, which is why everyone is alarmed. And what we need to do is we need to organize neighborhood watches, block by block, know who your neighbors are. And when you're gone, make sure someone is watching your place, because someone else may be watching it for different reasons. So we just got to be smart. And that is something that's going to strengthen us. And people that are in elected office, particularly boards of supervisors, I have a majority of the board that still wants to continue defunding my department. I need a new board of supervisors. But they were elected by the people. So it's up to the people. We got to hold elected officials accountable. That starts right here with us.
Absolutely. Sheriff Bianco?
Yes, I will. I'll piggyback on that and say that what I hope we can do as a public, and what we are trying to do as an agency, and I think back to the last question of how we're engaging with the communities, what we really need is we need our community organizations, and we're talking any type of community organization, whether it be our churches, our community groups, our HOAs, our Little League programs, it doesn't matter what group you are. We all have to realize that we have far more in common than we have not. And the one thing that we have in common is that all of us absolutely want the safest places for our businesses, our kids, and where we work. We have to get past the narrative that is force-fed to us that there is a divide between the public and law enforcement. Because I am telling you, there is not. There is not. When we engage the public, the end of the question was, what can you do? What can he do to help, or how do you interact with law enforcement and make everything safe? So here's the deal. We are just out doing a job. We didn't randomly pick you out of thin air and say, get over here, you're going to jail. It doesn't work that way. Whether we want to admit it or not, and I will tell you that I'm just as guilty, and so's my daughter and my wife. No one stops at stop signs. No one drives the speed limit. No one cares about anybody else on the road, and every single one of you text while driving. So when you're pulled over for that, Why would you deny it and argue and really and say that you pulled me over for nothing? You got caught. There's no sense in interacting and starting that off in a negative fashion, because then our radar bells go up, the hair on the back of the neck stands up, and we have to ask ourselves, why are you not acting rationally? So a rational interaction between the law enforcement and the public is just a learning experience and a conversation between two human beings. And if when we contact you, we will act that way, and if the public acts that way when they deal with us, we have a great society. We have a great interaction. You may get a ticket, you may not. Feel lucky if you don't. If you do, pay your darn ticket and move on, and don't do it again.
Sheriff Dicus.
So 2 things we could use your help with. The investigative reporter. I think that's a lost art. There are 2 sides to every story, and apparently the only thing worth printing are what law enforcement does that's bad. We answer hundreds of thousands of calls across this country that are good and avoid violence every day, that the men and women doing the hard job show this exemplary example. But does anybody report on that? No. Don't buy into the clickbait media that we have right now. So that's number 1. Number 2, vote, but know what you're voting for. Remember, if it says the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, read the fine print, because we got duped. And we're going to make sure we don't get duped again. Thank you.
Getting all kinds of good questions up here. Thank you, sheriffs. All right, our next question is from Sarah Batista, and she said she wanted to submit some questions regarding the following. How is the urgent issue of human trafficking being addressed in your respective counties? What, from your perspective, is still needed to end trafficking on a micro and macro level? Does each county have task force that the community can be involved with, similar to what Orange County Human Trafficking is doing? They have a task force. From a law enforcement perspective, what are ways communities can address this issue most effectively? And she says, thank you so much for your attention and time and for your leadership. So let's start, where were we? Sheriff Bianco, are you up next for first answer?
If you say so, Jen.
That's what I like.
We have a very, very robust human trafficking task force in Riverside County, and we are doing everything in our power to make sure that we rescue these people that are being trafficked either for labor or for sex. And it's twofold. It's not just one, it's not or the other. Sometimes they are combined. However, what we need and what we are finding is we need the public's help. There is especially in our Hispanic community, who in our county anyway, is the most prominently trafficked, the most prominently victimized. And unfortunately, in the Hispanic community, especially a newer generation of Hispanic community, they have a culture in their families that they do not trust law enforcement. And they do not feel that they can come to us for help. They feel like, especially if they are here illegally or if they're not residents of the country, I can tell you this, and I'll speak for all 3 of them, we don't care. If you are victimized, if you are being victimized by anyone, that's all we care about. We're not going to victimize you again. We are here to help you and to rescue you from that person that is victimizing you. So as a community, as churches, as schools, as neighbors, we have to care about each other enough to convince people, to report things that look wrong. If it looks wrong to you, it probably is. Let us decide whether or not it is. For our churches and our pastors and the people that engage, especially with the Hispanic community, you be that voice. You reach out to them, and you be that conduit that puts us in contact with each other. Because human trafficking is a serious, serious threat to public safety right now. And we need everyone's help in combating it. It can't just be us trying to find them. We have to be told where you all think it's happening. Your businesses, whether it's Uber drivers, taxi drivers, bus lines. We are partnering, especially in the desert area of our county, with private companies, with hotels, with bus lines, with taxi services, with hospitals, and we are working with them to teach them what they should look for in a human traffic victim and report it immediately so we can come right there and hopefully rescue those kids and sometimes adults. But it's going to take all of us on the same page, and that's what I said before. We have so much more in common than not. And no one, I guarantee no one in here wants to think that they could help someone that is being victimized in human trafficking and not do anything about it. I guarantee you would want to. You just need to pull that trigger and make it happen and get us involved so we can help.
Thank you. Sheriff Dicus?
So in terms, there's another layer of this that we haven't talked about yet, and this goes to good partnerships, and I'm sure Alex can relate to this better than anybody. But while we're out going and doing our task force work, it takes a DA that's going to prosecute the Johns. It takes a DA that is going to prosecute the folks running sweatshops. And we tend to think this is a young girl kidnapping piece, and that is absolutely true, and it's an epidemic. But even when we do cartel marijuana grows in our deserts, both the Chinese cartel and the Mexican cartel, labor. They're brought in from other countries to work off their debt in what is truly illegal operations. We're set up to not just identify those folks, but make sure that they have the proper resources to be able to integrate into society, get them to wherever home is, and most importantly, prosecute those criminals.
Thank you, Sheriff Villanueva.
I got one name, George Gascon. We have a human trafficking task force, and we were working very hard leading up to the Super Bowl, and we made a lot of arrests. Pomona Pd, they have a red light district down Holt Avenue. Those of you familiar with Pomona, and it's been going on for years. And there's problems around the airport, Long Beach, Compton area. There's different areas in LA that have a red light district. So we're doing operations with the local community involvement. They identify the locations, we do reverse stings, we arrest the Johns, we do all these things, taking the DA, and our DA has officially legalized prostitution in LA County because he refuses to prosecute. So again, it's up to the voters to decide that, and I think they're going to speak their mind hopefully very soon. And but we're doing the things that we can do and partnering with the community, and we need people at the city level, municipality, and the Board of Supervisors to take this whole issue a lot more seriously, because we're being starved of the resource that we could use to rescue minors that are being trafficked and have outlets to get them off the pathway they're on.
And thank you. Just going off script a little bit, I've had the pleasure of meeting Sheriff Villanueva and Sheriff Bianco before, but Sheriff Dicus, I met you for the first time and we spoke. Do we have a backstage here? Back hanger, I guess. You mentioned Chinese cartels. You just mentioned it again. Can you all three have a discussion, because all three of you coordinated to break up all of these illegal marijuana grows, and you immediately think that there are cartels coming in from Mexico, but this is the first time I've heard about China making drugs and moving them into Mexico over the border, but what do we need to know? I don't think a lot of people realize that this is something that you're dealing with right now in law enforcement. And this can be for all three of you.
Sure, so I'm sure most of you have heard about Operation Hammer Strike, and that's our effort in San Bernardino County, but it is a joint effort with all of us, because think about that. In our desert areas, if we don't work in conjunction with each other, all we do is move these criminals back and forth. I don't think people realize that our deserts are lit up at night like Christmas trees, and you've heard of the Emerald Triangle up north. That same type of marijuana operation is going on illegally in our deserts, places that don't allow this. But if it doesn't rain for 2 days in the Bay Area, what do we hear? We're in a drought, right? What about the water theft that's going on, the pesticides that are poisoning our environment, and a number of those things in a state that we prize ecology? I don't hear Sacramento saying anything or giving any of three of us a hand while we battle this problem. So when we're talking about Mexican cartels coming in 70, 100 acres, 200 acres with these large grows. California has created a risk versus reward system. Very little risk, very high reward, very high reward. Some of the smallest grows gross $1 million. The fine, $500. Ever since the change in Prop 64, illegal cultivation has become an epidemic for all of us, and dealing with it is difficult. In our county, we're trying to up civil fines in terms of abatement, civil forfeiture, and a number of those things, just trying to be able to handle this problem. I've had 3 deputies have rounds come through the windshields of their cars because they got too close to a marijuana grow. And that sounds bad enough. But what's really bad is ultimately when we go in and take down those grows and arrest the suspects responsible, what do you think the first thing they say is? I didn't know it was the cops. So that means it could happen to you. This is a problem. It's a problem across the board. It isn't just a tax problem. The penalties for illegal cultivation have to be increased in this state. The voters said marijuana is going to be legal. If that's the case, we do exactly what the voters want, but we're going to handle the illegal side of this. And we need to make sure that as a community, our voices are loud. And if marijuana is something that's going to be legal in California, we need to move the illicit market over to the legal market so that we get it the way I believe the legislators intended it. Unfortunately, just like everything else we've talked about today, we put ourselves in a situation where the cart is very far in front of the horse.
Thank you.
Before I answer this, I want to say repeat everything that he just said, and I think that's the benefit maybe of having all 3 of us up here. I will probably tell you that no matter what we all say up here, we're independent people. We have our own brains and how that works its way out our mouth, but we're all thinking the same thing. We are all dealing with the same thing, and we all believe the same thing. So everything that Shannon just said, we are dealing with that exact problem in our county. The question of, so what I meant by to say with that is, it's great that you're getting 3 answers because we're answering the same question 3 different ways, but we all feel the same way. It's just our train of thought that comes out. That's where we go with it. So you're the benefactor of all of this, and we get to add to what each of us have said. So the problem that we have with the question of the cartels, what you asked about Chinese cartels, and that was the first you have heard of it, it certainly is not for us. We all experience the same thing. I think Armenian was what LA was dealing with in there. So there are certain factions and certain what law enforcement would consider cartels that is running the drug trade, and it always has. Typically, it always has been Hispanic. It's been the Mexican cartels. Unfortunately, it is now being rivaled by the Chinese cartels and the Armenian cartels, which that's what Alex was dealing with in the high desert, where he deals with them. But for us, I believe, the uniqueness between San Bernardino and Riverside is that we share a massive border. And so we are interacting with each other day in and day out. So our marijuana teams are constantly either assisting each other or working back and forth or even giving information to each other because it involves his county, not mine, and vice versa. So all of those things, the massive amounts of money are being made by the Chinese government, the Mexican cartels, and other foreign national cartels that are really just taking advantage of our laws, taking advantage of all of you, and it's just something that we have to do with. But certainly for marijuana, Hispanic and Chinese are the major players, and now in his county, which we're sure, it was a shock to us. It was a shock to me. I'm not sure about Shannon when he was explaining to me what he was dealing with. So it's just a matter of time that they move into our county too, which goes to talk about, I didn't know it was a cop, because gang members steal from each other too. Wow. And so if they're coming to steal somebody's crop and now a gunfight erupts and you all are a victim because you just happen to be driving down the wrong street, you can imagine the problem that we really have to deal with when we're talking about that.
Sheriff?
Well, when we did our raid last year, we found all 3 cartels were operating in the high desert. And now they're moving it into residential tracts, buying out entire neighborhoods and gutting residences and converting them into indoor grows. So now our teams are also into real estate transactions. They're all into that, and it's a very complicated paper trace, but our detectives are up to the task. They're doing fine there. The big problem always comes back to Sacramento. Prop 64 lowered everything from felonies to misdemeanors, but also makes all transactions are cash only. So you can imagine all the violence associated with all these cash transactions at dispensaries. Legal dispensaries are outnumbered by the illegal ones 50-1. Legal dispensaries are taxed at almost 50%, if not higher, of their profit, whereas the illegal ones is 100% profit. So you can see the huge economic disparity in the incentives to maintain the legal operation. In fact, in a legal dispensary, we can knock it down, and as long as they were running for 3 days, they made all the money. That's how perverse the incentives are right now. But in Sacramento, I have to identify one person in particular who's near and dear to me, Mr. Senator Bradford from LA. He's the chair of the Public Safety Committee. He is the one responsible for halting any type of legislation that would improve public safety. And when we're trying to address the issue of increasing penalties for illegal marijuana grows, he will stop it in the Public Safety Committee. When we had SB 350, fentanyl poisoning, we wanted to have that legislation passed so people who are dealing with fentanyl that causes someone's death, they could be tried as a murder and manslaughter. Great idea. He blocked it, but guess what his rationale was? He didn't want to expose drug dealers to further incarceration. That's Senator Bradford for you. So we have our fights in Sacramento, and I'm hoping voters are starting to pay attention.
We have some doozies in this state, don't we? A lot to deal with. All right, so we have some specific questions now for the sheriff and for the sheriffs, and just to piggyback on our conversation, a question specifically for you, Chad Bianco, is from Daryl Cowan, and he talks about what's being done. We talked about that with the marijuana growers, but he said he wants to know at least 3 known growers in our small area alone. He said there are at least 3 known growers in his area where he lives in Riverside County. So how many are you dealing with? What is the scope of this problem? I think would be the question.
Thousands.
Yeah.
So for Riverside County, obviously it's a big county, but we have communities. Our major outdoor marijuana grow area is our Anza Valley. But with our massive enforcement that we are doing up there, we're moving that down into the lower areas, whether it be in the Paris community areas, but now we're finding it even in the desert in the Palm Springs area and south into Coachella, and they're stealing water from the canal out there. So anywhere where they can go where they have land, they're going to grow marijuana outside, and we have thousands of them. We have a very good aerial unit that finds them for us. It's not hard. We know what marijuana looks like from the air. And we do everything that we can to target them in a systematic manner based on the time of the grow and the areas and the vastness of how many can you do in a day. The real issue that we don't know about is the indoor marijuana grows. It's impossible to know how many indoor marijuana grows are in our communities because, for the most part, COVID helped us a little bit, but if we went by a show of hands, I guarantee you that probably 10%, 15, 20% of you in here would say that you know all of your neighbors. And the issue with neighborhoods is we stick to ourselves. We drive down our streets and we have blindfolds on and we don't know who our neighbors are. You may have a marijuana grow on both sides of you and you don't even know it. If you never see people in the house next door, if the windows are boarded up, if the windows have foil on them, you never see anybody coming and going, they only come in the middle of the night, pretty good chance that's a marijuana grow. And the problem with that for us, we know there are thousands of them. It's just finding them, that's the tough part.
Thank you. All right, this will be for the San Bernardino County Sheriff. Sheriff, this is from Nick Cardenas, who said he's very concerned with women and child abductions in the county of San Bernardino. Is that a particular problem for you?
So, Nick, thank you for the question. I mean, that's a problem everywhere. We discussed human trafficking earlier. We haven't seen an overabundance of that. But I can tell you, in terms of the resources that we have, whether it's on the technological side or our investigators, should we have any of those types of crimes occur, I can tell you they're exceptional. And if any of my family members had any issues where they were abducted or kidnapped, I would certainly want them being investigated by these folks up here, because we're very serious about protecting our children.
Thank you. All right, Sheriff Villanueva, I think it's time to talk about your buddies at the Board of Supervisors. This is a question from Frank Garcia, and he says, by what power does the board think they can override your authority over your employees in opting out of vaccines?
Well, that's a big experiment that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars, and we're going to find out soon enough, because it's all coming to a head. My position is over my dead body. They're going to do that. Their position, state law is firmly on our side. However, they're trying to rewrite the law to suit their needs. So all I can say is we'll see.
We'll see. And another one for you over LA County Sheriff Villanueva. This is an anonymous question, but they want to know how you are addressing the current state of safety on public transportation. We know there's been back and forth about whether or not your sheriff's deputies will be patrolling the trains. Where are we today, and what's the situation with that?
Well, we discovered something. I rode the train. I did the gold line, the blue line, the green line, and the expo line in uniform. Mm-hmm. And then some people said, well, you need to really try it not in uniform. So it's not like I can go undercover. But we went into civvies and we rode the red line and the purple line. And we did a little video on it. We put it out on social media. It kind of took off on its own. And we began a lot of emails about that, like, oh my God, the conditions are worse than third world conditions. So the MTA board, in their infinite wisdom, in 2017, decided to break up. We had the policing of the entire system. And prior to 2017, prior to July 1st of 2017, there was no homeless sleeping on the trains. All of the platforms were clean. The elevators didn't smell like outhouses. And it worked. Mm-hmm. But in 2017, they decided to play politics and break up it into three, but that was just first mistake. I mean, assuming all three entities can do the same operation, okay, you're going to lose some efficiencies. It costs $30 million more to break it up. So you taxpayers had to pay for that, by the way. But assuming they can do their job as cops. But the next part was the kicker. We don't want anybody to arrest anybody. Yeah, so that means the transient smoking meth, butt naked, in a train, doing unspeakable things to himself in front of your family and kids, they're instructed to escort you out of the train and leave the disturbing party on the train. Because for them, it's a sanctuary. They've created a sanctuary on our trains. You can't make this stuff up. This is what happens when you get people, 14 woke individuals, the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and the members of the MTA board. They all worship at that altar of wokeism, and they decided that cops are mean and people feel intimidated and threatened by the presence of law enforcement. So they prefer the naked guy smoking meth. I kid you not, this is exactly what's happening. So, July 1st, our contract is over. When you're 1,000 deputies in the hole, 1,000 because of a hiring freeze, I have 3 jobs waiting for every deputy that's working on the MTA right now. I can have all those 315 deputies back to patrol, back to solving crimes, back to keeping our jails safe and saving lives, or I can have them on the train sitting on their hands because they're not allowed to do their job. So July 1st, we're going to see what the board's going to do. The ball is in their court, and I'm willing to negotiate with the board, but what I'm not going to negotiate with, cops are going to be cops. We are going to eject people.
Amen. You know, and just to piggyback on that for a second, and I guess maybe I'm a little raw because George Gascon is my district attorney, and so the stuff that comes out.
I apologize for that.
I know, and it's stomach churning, the stuff that you hear out of his office. It doesn't make
any sense. But California in general is no great place. It supports law enforcement. Proposition 47 and 57 have done a lot to make all of your jobs harder. So how do you keep your morale up when already you have people in the media going after law enforcement? You have people who are putting their lives on the line that could not return home to their families, and maybe the arrest they'll make won't even be prosecuted, or maybe they'll be let out early because of all of these changes to the law in California. So what do each of you do to keep the morale of your deputies high, to make them want to continue to do their job? And I'll start with you.
Well, I started this conversation with letting you know that all of our law enforcement officers are absolutely exceptional. This career is a calling. And it's a calling at times when things are good, and it's even more of a calling when things are bad. And when I say they're exceptional, I can tell you that they will rise to the occasion, and they will continue to take care of business for all of us. But we are talking about a reality of morale and a number of things. Alex has mentioned the number of vacancies had. It's really across the board. Probably one of our biggest public safety threats is recruiting a law enforcement officer. And imagine what you hear in the media, and imagine what they're hearing in the media. They only report the bad stuff, not the good stuff. And let's be honest here for a moment. Law enforcement is tasked with doing things that in terms of humanity are awful but lawful. And the expectations of all of our good community residents is that we will stand up and do that job, even though it's a hard one. So wellness of an individual officer is paramount right now. We've got apps, we've got wellness centers, we've sponsored a number of counseling teams, and we're trying to do a number of things to really make sure our folks know that they're taken care of. And I think you can all agree, you've all seen us, all three of us in the community, it's important for them to know that we care about them individually. And it's important for them to see us. So communication in all of our departments is paramount, to let them know that they're doing the right thing, and let them know there's folks like all of you who genuinely appreciate them, and we make sure we remind them of that every day.
I agree completely with that. And one of the things for our department, we're all experiencing the same thing. Some worse than others. We all have vacancy issues. We all have, unfortunately, for us, we are experiencing a major influx of applicants and a major influx of lateral transfers from other agencies. And while we know that is hard because of the pride that they have for their agencies, they're almost being forced out of those agencies because of the political climate that they have. One thing that Alex just said that he will make it perfectly clear is that his deputies will be deputies. That is their job. They will not be, they're not going to sit on their hands. And for us, basically, I think everyone in our department knows that no matter what, you do the right thing, you come to work every day, you do your job, they know that I will be standing right beside them 100%. If they are there trying to make your life better, doing the right thing day in and day out, they know that they have my unwavering support, and I will not cave to politics. I will not cave to the legislature. I will not cave to government officials outside of my county that want to control what goes on with our residents and with our deputies. So morale is a big deal within law enforcement. We all know that our job is to keep you safe by arresting criminals, and to be really honest, we can't care. I'm lucky in Riverside. I have a great DA. He prosecutes everybody we send to them. For our partners that do not have that luxury, and for our residents that do not have that luxury, know that internally we don't care what happens afterward. And if they keep letting them out, a good morale and a positive morale in the department will just keep arresting those people day in and day out, every time they're victimizing you again. And when you have leaders that are backing their troops, you have nothing but positive, energetic deputies that are coming out to take care of you. So you all have that you should know that all of you are experiencing that now, because that's exactly what their departments have.
Thank you. Sheriff Villanueva?
I'll say ditto to Chad. And at some point during the height of civil unrest, where all the protests were about law enforcement. They were trying to sell the idea across the nation that law enforcement represented an existential threat to young men. And I said, bullshit. Young men are an existential threat to young men because of the dumb things they do. The numbers are very obvious. But I can tell you this, and I agree with my two colleagues, we will not allow our deputies to use the excuse of someone who is not doing their job for us not to do our job. So they're going to continue doing their job, and we're going to continue making the arrests and all the investigations, and we're racking up a big track record. Last year alone, 13,238 cases that we made arrests, investigations, presented them, and the DA rejected them because of special orders. Not because there was a lack of a case, because of the special orders. So we got to pay attention to that. But in the meantime, and on the morale side, I'm going to back the good work that all my deputies are doing, all my employees. If they cross the line and do something bad, they will be held accountable. Our job is to maintain a high standard for the profession and the department, and we're doing exactly that, even if the LA Times refuses to acknowledge it. But I want to acknowledge some people here in the room. Right over there in the black shirt with the shiny dome is our good friend, Rich Bojorquez. He's the nation's very first mental evaluation team dedicated to veterans. They're knocking it out of the park. And in the back, I saw Lieutenant Jeff Dedrick, Homeless Outreach Service Team. Another individual who is just knocking it out of the park. He is now the nation's foremost expert on getting people the help they need in breaking up encampments. 100% track record, no arrests, no uses of force. You would think the Board of Supervisors would listen to him? Nope, not at all. That's the world we live in. But our morale is high. We're going to keep doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Couple more questions before closing statements. I heard you mention early on, Sheriff Dicus, when it comes to homelessness, you say that a conservatorship should be something that we consider in handling people with mental illness. Certainly no one wants to see anyone living or dying on our streets. We're the 5th largest economy on the planet. We should be doing better. But what do we need to be doing, in your opinion? And we'll go down the row.
So you hear the governor talk about care courts. And when I've talked about flying a plane with no place to land it, we keep passing these laws without capacity. So capacity to be able to take care of a homeless person compassionately, someone experiencing heavy substance abuse compassionately, or mental health issues compassionately, will require us a conservatorship. Right now, Alex mentioned his HOPE team. We have a HOPE team. Chad has the same team. We're encountering people that if they want to be housed, we can house them. There are resources for that. But the large majority, and I'll just give you some numbers in my county, we contacted, if we break everybody out in just individual contacts, 2,700 individual homeless folks. We were able to house 210 of them last year. But split up the remaining folks, it's almost a dead even split, 50-50, to mental health and substance abuse, who do not want to go to a center, who do not want to follow the rules. It's going to take a conservatorship to get them off the street and return them to a level of sobriety or competency. And since we don't like the cops being involved in this state, we can get these places run by mental health staff and make sure these people get the help that they need and get them off of their streets so they're not accosting all of you.
Sheriff Bianco.
We all do deal with the same things over and over and over again and the same issues. So with homelessness, what I want you all to know is we will never, our government will never fix this issue if we keep calling it homelessness, because it has nothing to do with homes or lack of homes. It is a drug-induced psychosis that is causing all of the issues, or the majority of the issues that we have, that we see in public, that you see day to day driving down your streets, going to the grocery store. Those numbers are no different than any of our counties ours are basically the same because of the size and the demographics. His are obviously going to be probably 10 times bigger just because of the size of the area. The people that want help, that we interact with every single day, we get them help. That's what we are there for. The majority of them do not want help, and the government is making it so we cannot help them. Prop 47 destroyed any ability that we had to get people into substance abuse programs and into mental health programs. There's no consequence anymore, and they know it. A lot of what we're talking about, our entire existence is public safety. So everything we deal with is public safety. And when Alex was talking about the public safety committees that are in the Assembly and the Senate, someone earlier asked me what I hope to gain by this, and it was a media person asked me what I hope to gain by this. And originally it was, I hope that the public sees that we're all on a united front fighting for you. Secondary, I'm hoping that the media that is here actually cares, and we did get a comment that said that journalism is dead. There is no such thing as journalism. What I hope that all of you see is that the common theme over and over and over is our lawmakers and our public safety committee, that we've hinted around the subject, but they have completely taken away our ability to almost arrest anyone, but the consequence is what they're alleviating, and they're making it so it won't happen. Their public safety committee, their standing agenda and direction is that they will not pass any law that adds any criminal punishment to any crime for as long as they're there. What I mean by that is we should have repealed Prop 47. It didn't even make it out of committee. We should have made the corrections to Prop 47. That didn't make it out of committee. All of the issues that we have with homeless, with fentanyl, with drugs, nothing makes it out of the Public Safety Committee. So what I hope with all of our issues that we deal with in law enforcement, what I hope that really comes out of this is you all see the obstacles that we're up against, but I hope that these cameras right here that are feeding it back to editors and general managers and everything else, and people that claim to be responsible journalism and journalists, start doing your job and start asking the real questions of our legislatures as to why they are not working with us to keep you safe.
Thank you, Sheriff Villanueva.
Well, doing some research, we uncovered something that we've labeled the homeless industrial complex. They spent $6.5 billion, and that's a conservative figure, over 10 years, only to see the LA County homeless count go from 39,000 to over 83,000. Who spends that much money to see a problem get twice as big? At what point do you as an elected official say, man, this didn't work? In the private sector, you would have figured it out by probably day 2. Not the geniuses on the Board of Supervisors. Nope. No, they want to double down, triple down. And then along comes the governor, let's throw some more money in it with strict accountability guides. Oh, that really warms my heart. The point is, they have a failed model. They're not regulating public space. They're not providing the capacity. They're not providing the conservatorship, any pathway to get people off the street, into shelter, into treatment, or if they're here on their own free will because they're going to take advantage of how dumb we are, a one-way ticket back to wherever they came from. I don't need them here in LA. What we're missing is political will. We have the answers.
Absolutely. All right, there were 2 questions on Senate Bill 1464. Janessa said, how as a community can we fight SB 1464 and support law enforcement in enforcing the actual laws to protect our communities, properties, and lives rather than enforcing public health orders? And Fernanda said, are you, Sheriffs Villanueva and Dicus, aware of SB 1464, a bill that would force law enforcement to enforce public health orders? We know that Sheriff Bianco is, because we have a beautiful letter here from Sheriff Bianco on SB 1464. So, Sheriff Bianco, do you want to start with your opposition to this, and then we'll get some comments from Villanueva and Dicus?
So 1464 is basically going back to COVID and what we said in the beginning of them taking our ability to do what you have elected us to do. You all are electing us to provide you the absolute best, most quality law enforcement services that we can. And for Riverside County, that means that we address quality of life issues in every single one of your neighborhoods, your business communities, your mountain communities, whatever the case may be. Everyone has a different quality of life issue. What this is doing is it's taking it backwards and saying, oh, well, they have too much power. That elected body, that elected sheriff of every county has way too much power, and he's not doing what the governor tells him to do. So we are going to take that ability away from them and mandate that they enforce these orders, these mask orders, whatever. And if something else changes in the future, it could be you can no longer drink 32-ounce sodas. Who cares what it is? They're going to say that if the governor makes a mandate, law enforcement has to enforce it, or we will be guilty of committing a crime subject to arrest and imprisonment. The problem with that is you all have elected me in Riverside County to provide for your local individualized law enforcement needs. And what this law does is it takes a politician sitting in his little shrine, wherever it is that he goes, whether it's his restaurant that none of us can afford or his little office that's very well protected. He's telling all of you that I can no longer prioritize the quality of life issues in your neighborhood. I can no longer go selectively toward gang enforcement or vehicle theft or retail theft because he's making the priority and my priority and demand that I enforce his order before the regular laws that criminals are victimizing you. So this is doing nothing but a bunch of children in Sacramento taking their ball and going home because we wouldn't do what they wanted us to do. They're going to change the law and make it to where we have to. And the only people that are going to pay for it, I'm not going to pay for it. I may pay for it because I'm certainly still not going to do it. I might be in jail. I'm sorry, honey. But the real victims of this bill are you. You are now going to be the victims of this bill. The criminals are going to benefit from it because all of my resources and time are going to be mandating whether or not you wear a mask or mandating whether or not you come out of your house on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday or whatever the rules seem to be. You elected us to provide the best public safety law enforcement that we can for you. It's not up to a politician to tell us what to do here.
Any comments, Sheriff Villanueva?
Well, I kind of think I might have inspired this law. But I'll tell you this. Another fine individual in Sacramento, name is Scott Wiener. I kid you not, that's his name. About any idiotic piece of legislation you can think of, then think of it twice as bad, and I guarantee you his name is going to be on the authorization line.
I call him on my radio show the purveyor of all bad ideas. Comes from him.
I mean, it's an uncanny ability he has. You have to admire it, really. But I'll tell you this. I have no intention of following that because, as Chad said, the office of sheriff, and we're only temporary holders of the office, but the office of sheriff belongs to you because it's a constitutional office. And public safety is beyond a constitutional right, it's a human right. Everyone has a right to their own safety. And I'm not going to allow any twerp in Sacramento to dictate whether you're going to survive or not. That's just not going to happen.
Sheriff Dicus.
So I want to let you guys know, how do we actually fight things like this? We have a state sheriff's association where there are 58 sheriffs there. We look at all the legislation. Each one of us have legislative liaisons that go to Sacramento and talk to each one of those, and we put the money where our mouths are and actually testify against or for legislators that are willing to work with law enforcement. So I don't want to leave you guys thinking that we just have to take these things, but right now with the majority of that we have, our fight is very, very difficult. We're not being heard. You've heard the Public Safety Committee mentioned a number of times, and they do not hear anything. They're on their phones while we're testifying, and just the disrespect that's across the board is really unbelievable. So to everything both of you said, ditto, this is something we all have watchful eyes on, and I certainly hope that reasonableness prevails.
I want to add something just
Sure.
because of what he said about these committees. We are going above and beyond to do everything we can to convince them that they are hurting our efforts of keeping you safe. And what I hope you all just heard right there, and you were clapping, and so the only reason I interrupted is because you were clapping, and I want to make sure that you heard what he said. You have elected us as the person to keep you safe. There are only 58 of us in this state. We are the head law enforcement officers of your respective counties. Sheriff Villanueva was not there. Sheriff Dicus and I were, and we testified on one particular bill. So the person that you have elected, San Bernardino and Riverside County, and it would have been the same if he had someone in there, but they only allow so many people in. The people that you elected to keep you safe, the responsibility and the authority that we have, while we were testifying, every single one of them were on their phones. They were thumbing through. I have kids. I know what this means. That's social media, their pages, what are they looking at? They couldn't care less what we were talking about. And when we left, we had not got to our car, and we got text messages saying that they voted no. They voted it down. They couldn't have cared less what we had to say, because it was going to be helpful in keeping you safe. So for all of you, know that we are doing everything we can, but you all need to be very, very, very aware that the people that you're putting in Sacramento are doing everything they can to counter that.
Thank you. Now, we are going to get your closing statements here in just a few seconds, but I do want to do a little speed round to wrap this up. Can you give us, each of you, 30 seconds to a minute, an outlook, what we need to be aware of for the next year, what your big challenges might be, and just kind of give us a look forward to throughout 2022. Sheriff Dicus, we'll start with you.
Sure. So number one of our biggest difficulties is recruiting for all the things we talked about today. Where we need your help is friends and family members. Make sure we're speaking the truth to them and let them know that this is an honorable profession and the men and women out there do an exceptional job, and they're here to take care of you. Vote. Know what we're voting for. Make sure that we back the right people, those people that have the true hearts. We have to get interested in this. And listen, our lives, particularly after the pandemic, have never been busier than they are now. Everybody's playing catch up, but this is critical. We have to take the time and find the people with the hearts, not the hearts that are going to throw out things that just stick to the wall, but true hearts for the betterment of humanity, and let's vote them into office and vote the others out.
Sheriff Bianco.
So for us, and the major thing that we have to deal with, and obviously this is an entire country thing, the number one killer of Americans right now is fentanyl. And our enforcement of fentanyl coming across the border, our seizures of fentanyl are astronomical. The amount of people that are dying every day from fentanyl poisonings are just frightening. And it's something that we cannot get the media to report on. We cannot get our schools to help us on. They want to teach responsible use of drugs instead of no use of drugs. And I'm telling you right now, with the threat of fentanyl, there is no responsible use of fentanyl. One pill is going to kill you, and you never know when that pill is going to be that fatal dose, and it's going to happen. So outside of that, we will continue doing everything we can for our marijuana efforts, our CCW efforts, our protect your individual communities with whatever ails you in your neighborhoods. But I have to echo, the most important thing you can possibly do is get involved, get educated. You must vote. And if you are a good, upstanding person that cares about others more than yourself, you might be the person that has to run for school board. You might be the person that has to run for city council. You might be the person to have to run for these local elections, these state elections, because if you don't do it, we get stuck with the people that are there.
Sheriff Villanueva.
I'm going to echo that sentiment. Let's start using the phrase defunders. Use it on your social media. Figure out who's running for office or who's currently in office up for re-election, and if they have a track record of being a defunder, make sure everybody knows, They're a defunder. That entire defunding of law enforcement, reimagining, all these fancy terms, they didn't work. The results are in. It's an absolute failure. So let's move on. Let's get people in elected office at the national level, state level, county level, city level that are responsible, and I don't care what party they come from, but as long as they're going to vote for public safety, taking care of the community, we got to support them.
Amen. All right, gentlemen, it is time to do your closing statements. You can keep them to about 5 minutes if you'd like. Sheriff Villanueva, we will start with you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today, for the attention you've paid, the respect you've paid to our callers. I really appreciate that, and it touches my wife's heart. Vivian, she's right there. Actually, if you could stand up and wave to everybody. Yes. Without her, I would not be here today. And I think 2022 is going to be a special year. I think it's going to be a referendum on a national disease that's going to finally see a cure coming along. Wokeism is on the ropes. Let's put it out of its misery in 22. But, again, I'm going to ask, let's make sure in all of our dialogues that we embrace our neighbor who may have a different point of view. It's okay to have a different point of view. We can be civil and disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's healthy. That means there's at least two ideas. If everybody has the same idea, well, we're a bunch of idiots with only one idea. That's not smart. We need multiple ideas. So embrace different points of view. Let's get people who think differently involved in public office, involved in volunteering. And my job here as sheriff, I took the job, my only goal is to make LA livable again. And I'm gonna focus on that, and I want everyone who's in elected office to do just that. Do the right thing. Don't make decisions based on, well, how does this make me look for the next job I'm already identifying? No. You know, council people that want to be mayors, mayors want to be senators or governors, governors want to be president. Let's knock out all this nonsense. How about do the job that's right in front of you? Take care of your current responsibility. How about political parties that knock off that nonsense about rising stars or grooming this or grooming that? No. How about find out people that get the job done, period? Is that too much to ask? Let's focus on getting the job done. And we can do it working together. The community, law enforcement as part of the community. Very important, part of the community. And let's keep recruiting from our communities. I think we got a healthy future ahead of us. Thank you all.
Thank you. Sheriff Chad Bianco.
I'll keep this very short and just reiterate the two things that I said already. What I hope comes out of this is I hope that all of you see that the three of us, and I will go past that and say our peers that we have, our colleagues that are sheriffs that are around us, we are all on the same page to make sure that we keep Southern California the absolute best place in this country. And I will tell you that we not only do that with working together and doing what we are supposed to do to keep you safe, but the level of professionalism that we expect on our department is at the utmost highest level you can imagine. I don't want you to fall prey to wokeness, to what's happening in other places, to what you may think are these major issues because media just bombards you with it day after day and day after day out. What I will tell you this, law enforcement as a profession, our entire existence in our profession revolves around honesty. It's honesty and integrity. If we are not honest, we cannot hold the position that we have. If our deputies are not honest and we find that, they cannot be deputies anymore because we cannot have them in court. It's a legal issue that it's just a fact of our profession. The reason why we are not included in the public debate with our legislators, with our politicians, and other people like that is because they know that we are the only ones telling the truth. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear. regardless of what that truth may be, it might not be what you want to hear. Know that we are very proud of where you have placed us, of what you have elected us to do, and we are very proud of the men and women that we have with us in our departments, and we are doing everything in our power to keep you safe.
Thank you. Sheriff Dicus?
In the state of California, business is the lifeblood of our state. You constantly hear about we're the 8th or 9th largest economy, but yet we're losing congressional seats. And we're seeing good citizens and good business owners leave this state to take the good deeds that they do and go elsewhere. We need to keep them, and we need to protect them. And the men and women that you see all around this building today wearing badges and across not just this state, but this country, they have a love affair, and they have a love affair with their community. And just realize that all the things that happen and all the negativity that they receive, they still get up every day, put their boots on, and they rise up to take good care of you.
I want to say a special thank you to all of you for participating today, and give yourself a big round of applause because your questions were amazing. We thank you for being here, and let's thank once again Sheriff Shannon Dicus, Shannon, Sheriff Chad Bianco, Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Big round of applause for the entire panel. Thank you so much for coming to our first annual Tri-County Sheriff's Forum.